Hey, everybody, welcome to the Dream Big podcast. I'm so glad you're joining us. This is a place where you can come with all your creativity and all of your hopes. For some of you, faith guides your steps. From others, you just love people. And I've got a camp in foot in both camps. Love people, love God, but love seeing all the creativity that's released into the world. And today we've got Randall Wallace with us, which is just such a treat. I'm going to let him introduce himself, but prepare to be just delighted. This whole idea of how we release what is like bubbling up inside of us. Randall has spent an entire career doing that. So, Randall, thank you for joining and welcome to the show.
Bob, it's an honor and a joy to be with you. I'm so glad to get to do this.
Screenwriter, film director, producer, nice guy. Tell us a little bit about the adventure. Everybody's going to know Braveheart, but tell us a little bit more about what it feels like to have been you, to get us kind of current with some of the things you've learned along the way. And then I'd love to hear, what is it that you're dreaming of these days?
So I grew up in the South. I was born in Tennessee, and I lived there until I was about 11. And then my family moved to Virginia, and then I went to school in North Carolina. So I'm really a kind of all over Southerner. I go back to Mississippi every year because I have friends there who have a charity, and they're a real family to me now too. So that's the South's always my home. I love California as well. I moved out here after a stint in Nashville working in the music business. I found I wasn't exactly a country songwriter, though I learned so much about music, because country songwriters are the pinnacle of songwriters. They're real craftsmen. They write way more than other people do. They study songwriting in a certain way, and they're revered in Nashville, actually.
Yeah.
But I was in seminary in North Carolina, and I left the seminary to go to the music business. I was there about 3 years, and then continued my journey out to California. And I never imagined, Bob, that I would be in the movie business. It was never an ambition of mine. I wanted to be in music, but
can we just pause there for a second? There's a whole bunch of people that listen to this podcast, and they've got this ambition, and they go, how do I get from here to there? And they think they're going to draw a line from here to there. And it's just so encouraging to hear you're like different states and doing different things. And the thing that many people know of you most often about was not even on the radar at the time. You were writing country music. I love that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something that I think will really resonate with you. I grew up in the church, tent revivals. My grandmother had a tent on her, or she allowed them to put a tent on her property because she had founded the church that we attended. It had started in my grandmother's living room, and it's funny, now my sons will say to me, all the time that your parents took you to church sounds almost like child abuse, because we were there hours and hours and hours a week. And they say, how can you love going to church now? And I tell them, well, there are many, many reasons, but I heard Bach and Beethoven. I heard the Bible read daily. I heard orators who could hold an audience with nothing but what they were talking about and the sound of their voice. I could have never gone to school and had a better education than most people will ever get. But I never felt, I grew up Baptist, and Baptists believe in the priesthood of all believers. I never was ordained, but I never felt that my responsibilities as a Christian were diminished because I had not been ordained, or would be increased if I were ordained. Yeah. It was, my responsibilities were absolute. Not that I held up the standard, but I embraced it. And when I was when I was getting ready to go to seminary, my childhood pastor and I were talking, and he said to me, "Do you feel the call to be a pastor?" And I said, "Honestly, I don't, but I know it's the greatest calling anyone could ever have." And he said, "Well, you're wrong. The greatest calling anyone can have is the one God has for you."
Yeah, bingo.
And that was an astonishingly powerful bit of pastoring that he did for me, because I felt a kind of endorsement of the sense that God is giving us things all the time. And you're talking about creativity and unleashing that. It's like you have a plan and you do your best to execute that plan, but God's got a plan that's better than yours. And when something interrupts you, when something is in your way, and you think, well, why is this happening to me? And you see it as a setback, or even as an obstacle instead of an opportunity, that's when you're on the wrong path. You're on the right path always. You're always in the hands of God. And
I really like how a creative like you, that we're sampling constantly. We're just gathering information from the things that we're experiencing, the people that we're experiencing. Do you think that a lot of what shaped your creativity, in addition to music and everything else, was a stint in seminary? That you said, I'm going to do this for a while, see what I learn?
well, of course.
Yeah.
And also I think if you see life in terms of creativity, I mean, if you, I know if as an archetype of your personality and orientation, you tend toward openness and creativity, like Jordan Peterson would talk about. If you have trait openness, it's maybe easy to project these things, even in your own personal theology. But Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created, makes me say creativity is when we're being open, when we're saying that what is now is not as good as what might be in a moment. We're actually opening ourselves to God.
Yeah,
And
totally.
we're obeying the first commandment, which is have no other gods before. I am the Lord your God. It's the sense that the way I understand it now is not necessarily as great as it might be. I know you and I have a connection with Pepperdine, and
Yeah, we do.
Pepperdine's right down the street from me, and I love Pepperdine. I love the people that they draw there. When the new Pepperdine students come in, and they're not even officially Pepperdine students yet, when the freshmen hit here in sort of late August and you see them come in, it's like fresh air blew in to Malibu. And Malibu is a place of fresh air, but you see these young men and women, and they're opening the doors for people. They're saying yes, sir, and no, ma'am. They're looking you in the eye. They're smiling. They bring a joy and a love.
Yes.
It is tangible. It's profound. And
I remember each year when the law school would start, for many, many years, I would go up on the first day of law school and meet the incoming class and just let them know you are going to love being a lawyer. Because I think they've been watching Paper Chase or hearing all this intense stuff to say they ought to charge admission. Actually, they do charge admission, but it's just going to be so much fun, and the difference you can make. And man, just resist the pull to be typical. And that is among the creatives. Like, if you've got to really believe in your heart that God never compares what he creates, that he creates, like you said, and then he hovers, like the first, helicopter parent, create, then he hovered over it and said it was good. Then he creates some more and hovers. You found that cadence, and it brought you from the South and seminary and music via Tennessee. And now you're out on the West Coast. Tell us the next step in the adventure.
I will say to young people, The second biggest question in my life when I was in college was, what am I going to do with my life? But the biggest question was, who am I going to live my life with? I wanted to find a partner. And I met a young woman, I fell in love, and on her coffee table was a screenplay, and I had never seen one. And
Really?
never seen one. I had studied writing quite seriously with some quite accomplished writers of prose. But I honestly found the academic study of writing to be stuffy and negative, and more an exposition of your learning. Use a bigger word. Use a pretentious.
Yeah.
The word salad. But screenwriting was immediate.
Boom.
It's
Opening
almost like,
scene. Yeah.
yes, exactly. All you could show in a screenplay was what you can see the character do and what you can hear the character say.
Yep.
And I found that incredibly liberating. And also, the screenplay was heroic. It was written by the man who would become my father-in-law, because I would end up marrying his daughter.
Oh my
And,
gosh. From that coffee shop.
oh, he's the second father to me. He's passed on now, but he embraced me, and he was one of the most important people in my life. And he had been a bombardier navigator in World War II, was shot down over what is now Poland, but was then Germany, and he was a prisoner of war for 3 years.
Wow.
And he wrote a screenplay about this experience, and I was riveted to this screenplay and to the form. And I thought, well, I'll try my hand at this. And, I have here behind me Freedom. The longer version, one that I should carve on some other walls, is whatsoever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. And God put that in front of my hands, and I thought I'd give it a try. And Bob is really so funny. I had written songs. I would get up at 4:30 every morning to write songs. I'd done it for years. I'd gotten burned out and lonely and depressed. I sat down to try a screenplay, and halfway through the first page, I went, "This is a joy. It's not a labor."
Really? You're just like, it was air in your lungs.
Yes, yes.
So good. And with no formalized training.
Oh, no. In fact, there were courses that you could take. I'd seen advertised when you get to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles, of course, is a company town, the entertainment business town. You'd see advertisements for screenwriting courses. And I thought, I had a moment, like a momentary flicker of, should I take a course? And then went, nah, not doing it. Whoever's teaching it wishes they were actually a screenwriter, but let me try my way and make my mistakes first. And then I'll know what to go study or I need to find out, but I need to try this.
Oh, I love that. People, are you listening? If you're driving, pull over and write that down. Like, you don't need permission, and you don't need to learn how to do what you're about to do. Like, did you just decide? Like, it's just that you just decide, I'm doing this. And I'm not going to be affected by all the different details. As Paulie, I don't know anything about golf, but when they say wiggle a little and more weight on this foot and that, just like swing the club, have fun.
Yes. And it's really great that you're saying that. In school, when they want to teach creativity, teachers do want to teach it. But to me, so often what they're teaching is an impediment to creativity. It would be like the teachers will say, well, outline your story, or analyze how you're going to start, or, here, what's the structure and all of that. Well, an outline only looks like a good outline if it resembles something you've seen before. That's not creativity. I was once in a meeting with some this is a long story and we won't go into here, but it's an intriguing teaser. It was a bunch of CIA agents and some Chinese guys, one of whom was the head of their Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was the head of the Chinese military. And it was a very somber occasion, and we're all sitting there on different sides of the table. And the Chinese military guy said, a list of 100 greatest explorers and inventors of all time doesn't include one single Chinese name. So we're studying how to be more inventive and creative. And I laughed. and everyone in the room like, well, what do you, because I kind of went, and they looked at me and I went, well, you're calculating how to be less calculating.
Yeah, totally.
How does that work? Like,
wouldn't that have been lame if you walked into that coffee shop and you had an outline of how to find the girl of your dreams? And you're like, step one, hang on a second, I'm at step two here. That idea to just go with what, if you believe there's God and they believe that he is alive and active in the world and our circumstances and the people around us, you can start seeing opportunities when they come alive. You saw a screenplay and you said, I bet I could do that.
Yes. And, I will have students from time to time. I've gone to Pepperdine and sat in and tried to help out with screenwriting instruction. And these wonderful students will say to me, how do you hold on to your faith in a business like Hollywood? And I always say, I don't hold on. Holding on is not having faith. Holding on to me is being open and listening and letting my faith grow, rather than, well, I want to turn inward and clutch. Now, I do understand there are some times when you're like saying, I'm drawing a line here and I'm holding this line. I do certainly understand that, but I believe that you have to be open to the sense that God has a revelation. I think there was a theologian, I think it was Karl Barth, but he said, religion is man's way to God and is always erroneous, but revelation is God's way to humanity and it's always perfect. And that's maybe a philosophical distinction, but I understand what he means in terms of you never know when you're doing something creative what the result will be. And that's the joy of it.
I love the definitions. It's in Hebrews 11:1. It says, faith is confidence in what you're hoping for and assurance in what you haven't seen yet. So that's just such a beautiful, it's like, I don't know, tell me what you're hoping for. Tell me what you're living in expectation for. And you're not getting either buffaloed or scared off the scent. To say, go after that. Those are the people that are inspiring to me. I want to get more people like you in my life that says screenplay, like, I don't know, let's go. So what happened? You wrote a screenplay. Did you start with Braveheart? Was there several beforehand? I mean, tell the people are curious how that came to pass.
So I was married to a young woman who was absolutely brilliant. She had been a social worker. She was a Phi Beta Kappa valedictorian, but was unhappy being a social worker and decided to audition for a dance job and got it immediately. And suddenly, in a very short time, became one of the top dancers in Los Angeles. She did the Oscars and the Emmys and the Grammys, and we got married. And I was surprised when we first started talking about children, because when you're a young couple and your friends are having babies, and I would hold a baby and go, like, I could smell God in their breath.
Yeah, come on.
And my wife's friends were saying, he wants to have children. And one night she said, I never wanted to have children. I'm like, what? I never even imagined. Well, we ended up in a negotiation, Bob. And she went, I don't want to have them, but I could, okay, I guess I could have them. But if we get pregnant, you've got to take me to Europe. And I went, done.
Done. Let's go pack your bags.
And so we got pregnant, and she had Mormon ancestors. She had Irish Catholics on one side and Mormons on the other. And because of the Latter-day Saints connection, she knew all of her ancestry, and I didn't know any of mine. So when we were on this trip, and she was 4 months pregnant with our first son, we walked into Edinburgh Castle, and there was a statue of a man named William Wallace.
Come on.
No idea, never heard of him. And Robert the Bruce was on the other side of the entrance, this statue. And I said to one of the guards, because I knew who Robert the Bruce was, I knew he was Scotland's greatest king. So, who was this Wallace? And he said, he's our greatest hero. And I said, well, was he an ally of Robert the Bruce's in fighting the English? And he said the magic words that every writer loves, Bob. He said, no one will ever know for sure, which I love those words.
Oh, that's a great introductory. Yeah. It's like, come in,
yes,
come into my web.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he said, our legends say Robert the Bruce may have been one of those who betrayed William Wallace to clear the way for himself to become the king. And enlightening struck me at that moment. In a half a second, I was thinking, this is like hearing Judas Iscariot and Simon Peter were the same individual. What if something so noble in the way William Wallace lived and died transformed Robert the Bruce from a man who would betray the greatest hero of his country into the man who became his country's greatest king? And I thought, this is a story beyond any I've ever heard outside the Bible, but I'm not prepared to write it yet. Now, normally I would consider that a certain kind of cowardice, but I think it was also a certain kind of wisdom. It was, I'm going to keep writing. I'm just not quite ready to tackle this. Now, I have a great friend, Stephen Pressfield, who wrote The War of Art.
Yeah, great book.
Steve might think of that as resistance, and maybe there was some in that. But the big transformation came for me. I started working in television. I started making money. I needed to because I had children, and I was doing really well. My income was doubling every year. Had 2 sons by this time. We bought a new home. I had a long-term contract that guaranteed my income for years into the future. So we bought a new home, remodeled it, spent all of our savings to do that because I had this contract. And then there was a writer's strike. And it went on for over a year or nearly a year. And the company I worked for suspended my contract, which of course they were legally able to do. And then the company began to die. So I got out of the strike with no job, no money, no prospects. I was knotted up inside. When I was the same age as my sons were then, my father had a nervous breakdown. And it was the most terrifying thing in my life. And I could feel it happening to me. I could feel I was so knotted up, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and I certainly couldn't write. And I got down on my knees, which was the only place I could go. And I said a prayer. And the prayer was, maybe the best thing for my sons is not that they live in this big house with the swimming pool and the tennis court and the beautiful cars in the driveway. Maybe they'd be better men if they lived in a little house, even one without indoor plumbing, the way my sister and I lived when we had to be farmed out to relatives while our father was in the hospital.
Yeah.
And if that's what God wants for me and for my sons, then let me bear it. But if I go down, let me go down with my flag flying, not worshiping Hollywood, standing up and fighting for what I believe And I stood up and I went back to my desk. And without that moment, I would have never written "Every man dies, not every man really lives," or "They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom."
Yes.
I had to be there too. It wasn't simply the exuberance of writing and the freedom and the joy, but I had to also know that it was a turning away from fear, from places that had values that didn't represent me, into this sense of courage and faith.
Oh,
And that was the story
so
I wanted.
good. This is reminding me, for those of you that are listening and maybe you're in a tight spot right now. Maybe you've just run up against something that feels insurmountable. Not only is there hope that God would offer, but nothing is wasted. Not your pain, not your sorrow, not your, like, these setbacks that have come your way, a relationship that you really wanted and then it went missing, and whatever that is, to just say that God is up to something. And it isn't just a happy face saying you're going to find out later. I think in the fullness of time, you're just going to experience how that fits in, how that equips you to bring whatever creative thing together. I'm just so glad for your authenticity of saying it. I think a lot of people, Randall, think things go up and to the right in this linear fashion, and they just don't. As a matter of fact, this idea of following Jesus is very much a down and to the left proposition. And so as you're experiencing setbacks and joys alike, to just take note of those things. How can I be changed? What can I bring from this? You've got a lot in front of you as well. I think you're going to be launching a live show, aren't you? The Braveheart of Creativity. Tell us about that.
Yeah. And I began calling it Living the Braveheart Life, because I think that, so many people are looking for, like, how do I do this in my own life? And I had decided back during the pandemic, I got so sick of the fear that we were constantly being fed. And I'm not trying to make a pitch about being against vaccines or something like that, but so much of people who want to control us know they do it with fear. And, all the headlines are, oh, the snowpack is, and the apocalypse is coming. And then you read down and go, no, it's normal for this type of year. It's, there's the snow.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't start snowing soon, we'll go, yeah. But I wanted to bring people together, and actually physically together. I wanted to feel an audience in front of me rather than just having a movie screen between me and them. And I decided I would create a live show and use clips from my movies and tell stories like the ones that we're talking about right now, and songs that I wrote for those movies or about those movies, and share with them. I had an experience a few years ago at a screening of Braveheart in Texas. And at the end of the screening, a young woman stood up. It was a charity screening, and I was going to do a Q&A. The first person who stood up was a 19-year-old woman on the front row. And she stood up and said, "Mr. Wallace, I don't have a question. I just want to tell you something. My fiance died 6 months ago. And before he died, he told me to watch Braveheart so I would understand the way he loved me." And I had to.
How can you even talk after that?
Yeah. I couldn't talk for 5 minutes. It's like I had to compose myself, but it made me think of, what does it mean to love in a Braveheart way, to live in a Braveheart way? And I thought, I want to share that personally with an audience, and I want to feel what is important to them and relevant to them. I also found that, as a Southerner, I have a beyond deep love for gospel music. And I did the show recently in Mississippi, and the Sunday before, I went to the largest predominantly Black Methodist church in Mississippi and sang with their choir. I sang Precious Lord, Take My Hand
Come
with
on.
their choir. And then 2 days later, they came and sang with me at my show. And
So good.
and I can't tell you what a joy that is. So that's what I'm doing. And
I am
then
so glad.
I ran into Mel Gibson last night. It's a really interesting thing. I get to talk with you today. And we were talking about doing the resurrection. We've been working on I don't even know that it's fair to call it a sequel to the Passion of the Christ, but it's certainly the rest of the story.
Yeah.
And that's like the Mount Everest. I don't mean it's not like the Mount Everest. It is the Mount Everest of all stories.
Yeah. Bingo.
And that is invigorating and life affirming and bracing for me. So those are the big,
you know what's so inspiring to me is that I love that we have this intergenerational conversation. There's people that are listening to this that are in high school. And there's college students, there's people that are mid-career, there's some people that are towards the end of their career. I think these are just important conversations among generations about the path so far, but the courage that gets you. I want to just echo that idea that most of what we do is going to be driven by either love or fear. We just need to figure out what's the return address. Like with the action I'm doing right now, is that the return address love, or is it just like Bob being super insecure right now? And whatever it is, then to just pause, because if we don't see it, then we can't understand it. If we don't understand it, we can't bring it to God to fix it. And so if we could just slow that down, I'm really glad you're launching these live shows. How can people connect with you? Everybody wants to connect with you. How can they be tracking how the Braveheart lifestyle is going to come and how they can intersect that and the other things that you're up to?
They can contact us through wallaceentertainment.com. And we're thrilled to hear from everybody. We'll let them know where we're going to be. We love to be able to connect in any way at all. And that would be the best way.
That's awesome. Well, Randall, thank you so much. God bless you and the things that you're doing. I'm telling you, I'm not blowing sunshine at you to say the ripples that you are making in the world are washing up on shores around the world. And you're not trying to control what you create. You're just trying to release what's within you. And so keep up that brave work for all of us. Keep your eyes fixed on the heavenly. But then I love your relatability, that you just aren't using 20-pound words to describe things. And people, I mean, Jesus, smartest theologian to ever, and he points to two sheep and he says, it's like when one of those gets away. It's like, I know exactly what he's talking about. Well, blessings on you, my friend. Hey, everybody.
Buddy, but thank you so much. I mean, we never know what little moment is the one that just resonates in eternity when we connect with someone. And that to me is the one thing we don't want to do is sit still, except that there's that other part of the paradox of be still and know.
Yeah.
And stop for a moment to listen. Sorry, I don't mean to run on and on, but did you ever read The Four Loves by C.S. Lewis?
Sure.
All right. So there, something that hit me like an arrow in the heart. He said that friendship was born at a discrete moment in human history. It actually happened in a specific instant. And it was that there was a hunter who had realized that a deer was not only tasty, but beautiful. It was just, I've got to go kill that deer because my family's got to eat to survive. He also had realized it was a beautiful thing. And he was the loneliest man on earth until one day he noticed another hunter had stopped to watch the deer run. And in that moment, friendship was born.
Come on. Come on. So good. What a great place to pause. Hey, you guys, I hope you've been as inspired as I have been. What I hope even more is you won't just take the things that Randall has said and agree with them, particularly in matters of like faith and the gifting God's given you, but you'll actually go do something with it. Like whatever it is that you've been waiting for permission to do, you got permission. Just go do it. No more excuses, no more deferral. You've been listening to the Dream Big podcast, and I hope it's a terrific week. Randall Wallace, thank you so much for spending a little time with us, and God bless you in all you do.
Thank you, Bob. You too, brother. Thank you.